said to keep it under 2 hours. And I said, you're really cramping my style here. Anyway, fathers and your grace and daughters of our Blessed Mother, thank you so much for inviting me to come speak to you about this. It really is a great honor. I feel very much at home, surrounded by the ladies. I kind of grew up and exist in a matriarchal society. I'm Italian, and everybody knows in the Italian home, we know who runs things around there. And I have 5 daughters, 1 son. He's the last. He's the crown prince. He's going to make some woman very happy one day. He has been well trained, although he stands up for himself too. How
old is he?
He is 18. He has survived with all these mothers. I have sisters. One sister has 7 daughters and 1 boy, so carrying the tradition on. Lots of women. I love being around the women. I think God saved the best for last when he created, right? The very last thing. So pray for him. So I have 3 of my daughters are married, 2 grandchildren. The 4th daughter is getting married this year. And the 5th daughter is probably going to be getting engaged soon. And my son has his first date tomorrow night. First date. And he is really a catch, a handsome young man, smart, great personality. But he has not been... He has not been...
And he's thrilled you're sharing all this.
Yes, he is. Is this being recorded?
It is.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. He came and asked me if he could ask this girl out on sort of a casual, just go get coffee kind of thing. But he said, this is the first girl I think I've really been maybe interested in. So anyway, again, this topic that, I don't know who came up with this, but you were in the spirit, I think, in terms of the topic and asking me to speak to you today, because raising a family in the church and keeping our children in the church, I can't think of anything that actually is more dear to my heart and that is more important to me. And I've spent my entire ministerial life, actually my whole life, thinking about this very issue and being very committed to it. Really spending a lot of time and energy thinking about how we can address this, because we are in a crisis, and I don't have to tell you that. You know that we're in a crisis in Christianity and in our world. At any rate, this is not a talk I needed to go do a bunch of research on and develop an outline for and sit in the library and figure out what I wanted to talk to you. The things that I'm going to share with you are just the things that I have been wrestling with, thinking about, preaching on. This comes up in almost every sermon I ever preach in our parish. Our parishioners can tell you that for the last 30 years, which poses a little bit of a problem because I don't know how much time. Well, Bishop Thomas said I had 2 hours, but I think he was kidding about that. Huh? When do I need to fit? My wife is nodding with very big nods. When am I supposed to finish? Wrap it up?
Lunch is at 1, but you can keep talking through lunch and they can ask questions.
Okay, all right. And I do want to provide a little bit of time to have some discussion if we have time afterwards and some questions. So I'm just going to talk to you, just tell some stories, because it's an important aspect of how I want to communicate and how we need to help our kids. I'm going to sort of just be what I'm suggesting how we need to be with our children, and how it's going to help them to remain in the faith. I want to begin by giving you a little bit of background, which I think is very pertinent to everything I'm going to say, because I'm really going to be talking to you about values, about culture, a way of life, family values, values in a community, and priorities. And so to communicate that, I just want to tell you about my family and sort of how I was raised and how we live and how this has impacted our parish. As has already been mentioned, about 43 of us were received as a mission into the Archdiocese in 2006-2007 by Bishop Thomas. He has been a tremendous support and encouragement to us. over the last 16 years. Since then, Bishop John Abdullah was appointed over the Western Rite. We're Western Rite parish, and he has also provided the same love and care. And so I like to say we have two bishops for the price of one, except that's not true because we have two bishops for the price of two in reality. But we're very blessed with two bishops. I started pastoring in 1986, 20 years before becoming Orthodox, and a lot of the ideas and values that I'm going to share with you were deeply rooted in me long before becoming Orthodox. It was, in fact, these very things that I'm going to be talking about, though, that I saw in Orthodoxy, which drew me to the church. But these things were given to me, I don't know, by my parents, my father, by God, and I saw that they could be perfected in Orthodoxy. So this is really where the perfection of these values that I'm going to be talking about exist, are in the Apostolic Church. Carrie and I have 6 children, 2 grandchildren, but here's the important thing. We live 5 minutes from the church. It's important. We live on 100 acres with a bunch of our extended family. And we established this family community. We went in together and bought this 100 acres about 25 years ago or so, 25 years ago. And we live there with my father's up on the hill, my mother, my wife's mother's next door, sister, another sister, a niece, and everybody's just running around the property together. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what life is like there. Some people call it the compound. I don't really like that term. It has some associations that probably are not really good, but
we don't get to join, do we?
yeah. There's a bunker. No, not really. There's no bunker. So growing up, I grew up. My family's Italian. My dad's side of the family. We're actually going this week, taking all the kids, 11 of us, to Abruzzo. Really excited about that. But my father built the house I grew up in Loudoun County. He built it with his own hands. He tore down an army barracks at Fort Belvoir and trucked it over in a 1948 GMC, which used to sit out in the weeds in our lawn when I was growing up. I carried it over there, load after load after load, and he constructed our large house, 6 bedrooms, and we grew up there, and he dug the well that we used my entire life by hand. 30 feet deep, 3 feet in diameter. He dug that well himself by hand. As you can imagine, I heard this story many, many times, along with many other stories, which is really important to what I'm trying to suggest to you. Lots of stories, lots of trying to impress things upon us through stories. And he did this. This was back in 1958, 1960. Gary and I and our family, we moved out a few times for various reasons, but actually we came back to the house. We lived in that house so from 1958, I'm not that old, but that's when he built it. We moved out of that house in 2006. So we had the same phone number from 1958 to 2006, okay? And that house was full of people all the time. My parents were the most benevolent people I've ever known in my life. That we had foster children, we kept people in the home. It was just full of people, always. They were always taking care of people. We built a clothes closet in the garage just for the poor. We took meals weekly to the poor in our area. So that's how we sort of grew up, and my brothers and sisters. There were 6 of us. My father's 90 now, still mows 40 acres, raises cattle. A few years ago, he hand-carved 12 walnut Chippendale ball and claw chairs for his dining table, which he'd always wanted to do. He hadn't gotten around to it. So he finished those a few years ago. He just had terrible neck surgery because he was out in the woods felling 60-foot, 3-foot, or 2-foot diameter poplar trees out in the woods by himself, and hauling them up to the sawmill so that he could cut the lumber to build a processing plant for our animals that we raise. We do a little homesteading. And he wrenched his neck and had to get surgery, but he's waiting to get back out to the sawmill to finish this project because we raised some cattle and hogs and chickens and stuff. And he thought we needed to have a processing plant where we could do this ourselves. And he brought this up to the group, like 50 of us or something. We go away maybe once every 4 or 5 years all together. He brought it up and said, I want to talk to y'all about something. We need to build this processing plant because it's got to be air conditioned, to hang the hogs and all that. And everybody's like, Pappy, he will be known here too as Pappy. That's what we call him. So Pappy, that's great idea, but we're busy. We have lives and we're all busy. And I know you want to do this, but we need to think about this. And he's like, okay. And he gave his reasons for why this should be done. And this was important. And everybody's like, all right, just put the brakes on. We get home from vacation, and a couple weeks later, he's out cutting trees down. So that's how things work. So if Pappy decides something's going to happen, he can have a meeting, which is completely meaningless, because that's what's going to happen. So that's how it happens. Anyway, so he has 33, I think-ish grandchildren. 21 of them and their spouses are members of St. Patrick's. The only ones who don't live in the area. My brother is out in Texas. He also has 14 great-grandchildren. The latest was just born last week. And all 14 are members of St. Patrick's. Okay? As of now, not one of them has left the church. Not only have they not left the faith, they're all Christians, they haven't moved away. They refuse to move away. And that's not because they didn't have cause to move away. They have reoriented their careers, their economics, their living situations. I don't have time to tell you all the stories, but very interesting stories where they have made major life decisions so that they could stay put. That didn't happen by accident, as you might imagine. Okay. It came about because of a vision, a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of education and nurturing of certain values. I often refer to this as indoctrination. I like to use words in that kind of way. It's my rhetorical style. That word is usually used pejoratively, but I use it in a positive sense. My father indoctrinated us tirelessly. He told stories and talked to us and never failed to miss an opportunity to try and impress upon us from a very young age what was important in life, certain values, and it was just incessant. You got tired of it, but it just kept coming. And still, to this day, we go up there and we see him, and it's the same stuff, and he never stops. And he just impressed all, and his mother did this with him. He tells us that he got this from his mother. But a lot of it had to do with how important it was, what a beautiful vision it was to keep the family together. And he did everything he could to accomplish his goal, and he's done a pretty amazing job at it. A lot of people come around and they look at our family community, and which is quite unique in this day and age, and they say, this is amazing. I wish I could have this. I can't tell you how many people have come and said that. And I just laugh. And I'm like, you can, but do you realize what this costs? People, they come and they say, oh, I wish I could have that. Well, you can, but you have to make really some sacrifice. You've got to reorient your priorities. And they're not really willing to do that. Like when I'm going to suggest some practical things to you about how to keep our kids in church, and you're going to go, are you serious? Like you actually say that to your people? You actually expect that? And I'm like, yeah. Like we have lowered our bar so far. Our expectations have been so lowered. We think we can't actually expect of our children. And then we are so unhappy with the results of their lives. And we're like, no, we can expect these things, and we can set the bar very high. So, at any rate, there are going to have to be sacrifices if we feel that this is important, and a reordering of our priorities, and especially our careers, our personal economics, more than anything, will derail a vision of stable community. Wendell Berry, I don't know if any of you know who he is or have read him. I recommend him. He said the greatest obstacle or threat to a stable community is economic expectations. And this is because people move away to take a job or pursue their career or whatever it is. About a year ago, we had a family sort of visiting, the Church Orthodox family. It's mostly the wife. She was very devout. I mean, like monastically devout. And but her husband, not so much. Really nice guy, but didn't want to come to church. He was lost. Somehow he was lost in his life. And so I invited him over to the property, to the house there, to just chat and meet and talk a little bit. And when he came by, we have a pavilion there that we built where we have family dinners. When we get together for dinner, which is quite often, there's 40, 50, 60, and if people start bringing their indigent friends, it can start spiking up to 70 people. We had Thanksgiving dinner at our house a few years ago, and there were over 80 people for Thanksgiving. So he comes over, and the pavilion's there. We use it all the time, and Pappy had decided that the pavilion had to be re-stuccoed or something. And so there are 16 of the grandchildren are out there stuccoing the pavilion. So they got the cement mixer going, and they're shoveling cement, and they're all on scaffolding. 16 millennials, from like 17 to 32 years old. And they're out there just working, and he's like, who are all these people? I'm like, oh, those are the grandkids. And he got a tear in his eye. He said, what is going on here? And like, oh, Pappy told him they had to come stucco the pavilion, so they're out here stuccoing the pavilion. And he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And he said, I dream of something like this. And I said, well, it's gonna cost you so. I mean, like, you have to, this doesn't just happen. This has been in the works for a very long time. And a lot of perseverance. And I also told him, I said, they didn't want to be here. They complained. They were like, Pappy, we got things to do. Like, they're busy. They're all busy. We're all busy. Too busy, by the way. You really have to, the first place you got to start is by deciding what you're not going to do. I tell that to my people all the time, because we're too busy. But they didn't want to come. They didn't have time. And he said, you need to give up 4 weeks. I need 4 weekends. I think we can get this done in 4 weekends. I need all of you out here for 4 weekends. We got to stucco the pavilion. They complained, but he said, it's your duty. You need to have your priorities straight. This is for the family. I need you out here. You can change your plans. So they all came. And they were, once he got out there and got to work, and they were like, Pappy's right. Because Pappy's always right, even when he's wrong, right? That's how it goes. And they were there. And, they're going to tell their kids about that, right? They're going to tell their kids about those. And they have lots and lots of stories. That's just one. But they're going to tell their kids, and they're going to impress the same thing on their kids. They're going to say, look, this is what we did because it was the right thing to do. We had a duty, and because the family's more important than all this other stuff we thought was so important. He understood that. My dad didn't insist that they come out there because he needed the pavilion stuccoed. That's not why. I mean, he did need it stuccoed, but that's not why he went through this. He wanted them all out there working together. He was trying to give them an experience, and he does this all the time. That's why he insists on doing certain things, because he thinks it's important. And he's thinking, the most important thing of he's thinking long term. He's thinking long term about how he can keep this thing going, this vision. And he plotted for years. He was over at the house for dinner the other night, and I don't know if you asked him or somebody was there, said, Pappy, when did you start dreaming of this vision of this family? He said, oh, when I was about 10. And he grew up out here in Western PA, just below Uniontown. And I came up here with him once a month. And my aunts all lived on the same street, and uncles, and they grew up that way. And so he'd been dreaming about that for about 80 years. He's 90 now. And plotting about how he was going to make this happen. And I can tell you right now, he is planning for, his next stage in life. And he's trying to figure out how he can continue to influence us from the grave. Like, I'm not kidding you. That's all he does is sit around and think about how his influence can continue even when he's 6 feet under. So that's what he's spending these days doing right now. I'm talking to you in this way and sharing with you in this way and telling you some stories about things. This is how my father talked to me. This is how I talk to my kids. This is how I talk to my parish. You know, it's inspiring. You know, you get a vision of something that's beautiful and you think, I want that, you know. And then you have to face reality. Like, you have to kind of confront people with reality. Like, you can't have that if you try and hang on to this too. You got to choose. And this is reality. And if you choose this, you're going to miss out on this. And you're going to regret it. You're going to be lying on your deathbed, you know, with your plaques on the wall, with your degrees and your achievements, and not your family or whatever else is really important. And you're going to regret your life. Is that what you want? Anyway, that's how I talk to my kids and my parishioners. It works. I mean, because people are interested in the truth. We need to tell the truth in such a way that's compelling and grabs the heart. You know, I always felt like that's how you respect people. You respect people by speaking the truth to them very directly, especially kids. And that's how I talk to kids, like they're human beings, not children. And the way I respect them is by speaking the truth to them in a very direct way and not trying to, you know, manipulate them or patronize them. So anyway, that's kind of why I'm talking to you like this, and this is just sort of how I speak to our kids and my parishioners. We need to have a long game plan, you know, 5, 10, 30-year plan about how we're going to make some of these changes, how we're going to address this problem of raising and keeping our kids in the church. The local church is a family, right? It's a community. That's why I'm telling you the story about our family. It's a community. And the same values and priorities that we've tried to hold on to, very imperfectly, by the way, in our personal family, are what govern and rule our church community. And I want to say something else here really, really important. Our personal blood family is not more important than the church community. It's not more important to us than our church. This is something I keep telling our people because I think people misunderstand something. The reason that our family has been able to stay together is because our church community is more important to us than our family community. Did you hear? Are you following what I'm telling you? Yeah. It's really important. I don't think the people in the church understand this. They think, oh, you just kind of lucked out with this beautiful family and got all this. No. My family sort of followed me since I was a young, a young obnoxious. I'm still obnoxious, but I'm not young anymore. But, you know, when I was 16, I was very enthusiastic about the things of the faith. And they all kind of looked to me, and they were, you know, I was sort of a bit of a youth leader in my family. And I told them all the time, I was so obnoxious. I was like, because they were always saying, no, we have dinners planned, we have family events planned, we got to do this. And I'm like, look, I'm serving God. I'm going to church. And you know, Jesus said, you need to hate your father. I used to quote this to my parents all the time. You need to hate your father, mother, brother, and sister, and come follow me. And that's what I'm doing. If you want to follow and come along, we're going to church. I was really a jerk. So the point is that that's always been our mentality. Our commitment was not to the family. It was to the church. And that is where we got the value from. We got the value because our commitment was to the kingdom of God and the local church. And then that came back and fed back into our family. It wasn't the other way around. I mean, they feed each other. But that's where the value really came from. So I don't want you to think that just because you may not have that situation in your own family, doesn't mean you can't maybe try and create a little bit of it as much as you can, or inspire children to do the same. But where it's really important, more important than in your blood family, is in the church. And we have tried to maintain those values in our church community. And that's the first thing. Our children need to be in that kind of a community for them to be healthy and to remain in church. And that's the first thing, is to build a stable community culture, a culture. We're trying to build a culture which is governed by certain values and priorities. So as a pastor, I'm always thinking about that. I'm thinking about I'm looking at our community. Part of the job of a priest, 2 jobs, same thing that God told Adam, and same thing he told the Levitical priesthood. There's a couplet. Only time it's ever used in the Hebrew is for Adam in the garden and for the Levitical priesthood. You are to nurture and guard. That is the role of the priest, nurture and guard. And so I'm always guarding. I'm always keeping an eye out, because the enemy, you've heard that don't look for a devil under every bush. That's not true. You should look for a devil. There is a devil under every single bush. Everywhere you turn, there is a devil trying to kill you and destroy your family and your community. And we need to be on the alert and be looking out. That's why, somebody in the church buys a camper. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? That's not good. I'm actually not a controlling priest at all. I hate to tell people what to do, but I am always scheming, plotting, and looking out. What happens if they buy a camper? They have to use it. And 12 Sundays out of the summer, they're gone. That is not, I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. That is not good. A priest told me last night at dinner, he says, "Oh, we just bought a camper." I'm like, oh, God. I hope you're not at the talk tomorrow. I said, it's okay if you use it on Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, obviously, he's the priest. He's not going to be using it on the weekends. I got nothing against camping. But seriously, that is a great example. You need to be thinking about, am I going to go get a timeshare that's going to take me out of church? Am I going to go get a camper? These are the kinds of real concrete decisions I'm talking about. But I'm going to save that. I'll get into that in just a minute. So I'm always thinking about sort of the big picture, always telescoping out and thinking about what can we be doing now that's going to bear fruit 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now. We don't get discouraged, just start small. Just wherever you are, put your nose to the grind and just start working. Just start small and you just keep plugging away, and it's amazing how God will multiply your efforts in no time at all, and you'll see tremendous fruit from your labors. I believe that praying the divine office is one of the single most important things we can do to create a stable, healthy culture in a local community. This is a very firm conviction I have. And so how many people are at Orthros at your church? I would assume not too many, unless it would be an unusual situation. Okay, so I have been working like day and night, tirelessly, like my father, indoctrinating our people, talking to them, creating books and materials, trying to find ways to inspire them, to pray the divine office. I've been doing this for 15 years. I had always planned, there's too much information for you, but we were going to make a big shift in how we were doing the office. And I knew that 15 years ago. We just made the shift last year. I've spent the last 15 years preparing for this shift. And it is really, really been an important, monumental task. We are in the process of publishing a 5-volume set of the Benedictine office, fully pointed and notated for parish use. The Benedictine office is the oldest office in extant use in Christendom. It doesn't exist. There is what we're producing doesn't exist anywhere. So it's a huge project that we're pouring tremendous amount of resources into, but it is going to revolutionize things. It has already in our parish. We have tons of millennials. We have lauds every morning at 6:30, Vespers we have 3 services a day, and people come. And they come and they pray. And we have a whole group of people that pray the divine office. We've been working at this really hard and pouring. This took just a lot of sweat equity. But it took vision and sacrifice and commitment. Why? Because I believe that the divine office and getting our people to pray the office is one of the key factors in creating the kind of culture. And this is all about creating a culture, about creating the right kind of culture in a community to keep our kids. That's why I'm doing it.
What is the divine office?
The hours.
Oh.
The hours. So, so that's why I'm doing it. That's what I'm saying. You've got to plot, you've got to scheme, you've got to be like the patriarch Jacob. You've got to have foresight, and you've got to think about goals, long range goals. And you've got to I am a project guy. I love coming up with projects, much to my people's chagrin. And my assistant, Katie, who's amazing, every time I say, I've got an idea, she's like, oh gosh. Because it's usually not an idea that's gonna take like an hour. It's an idea that's gonna take like 10 years to pull off. But if we're serious about keeping our kids, this is the kind of thing I want us to be thinking about. What kinds of things can we be setting in motion and be working on that's going to really create a whole culture for them, an environment for them to be formed in, that is going to give us the best shot we can of keeping them in the faith. That's the way we need to be thinking. So I am not bragging. Honestly, I'm just giving you some information, some things. I know it's going to sound like I'm bragging. I'm not. I don't take any credit for this whatsoever. It is in spite of me. But I need to tell you these things because they'll help in the things that I want to say. But quite frankly, I figure my goal in my life, my lofty goal, is just to try not and screw things up. Like if I can do that, I feel like I have really been a success. So I'm just trying to stay out of the way, But there's a lot of people around there in the parish that are wonderful and done such great work. But on Sunday morning, we have lauds. Lauds is the same as orthros. So I just want to cap this off with this divine office project. Because of all this work and all this, we have 40 to 60 people show up at lauds on Sunday morning. Yeah, normal. So there's the proofs in the pudding, right? So it's possible. It's possible because we have been working for 15 years on trying to create a culture where they realize how important praying the office is. And I haven't told you why it's so important. You just have to trust me. It's important because it provides stability. It's the second most important thing you do in your life is to pray the office. The first most important thing is to offer the sacrifice of the Mass, or the divine liturgy, as you call it. That's the first most important thing. The second thing is the divine office. It's the handmaiden to the Mass, to the sacrifice. And what it does is it produces stability. I mean, we're created to worship and pray. That takes priority. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But nobody's going to talk me out of this. Nobody. Not an angel. There's not going to be an angel come try and convince me otherwise. I know this is true, 1,000%. Die on my sword. So as a priest, I'm responsible. I'm going to have to give an account one day. There's going to be a judgment. And the Lord's going to say, I gave you some talents. What'd you do with them? I buried them. Well, that's what scares me. I don't want to face that in the judgment. So I'm working to try and multiply the talents that God's given us. And I know that the divine office, what's important in this life is not like a Chinese menu. There's not like 782 options about what's important. There's you can count them on one hand. It's pretty simple. The sacrifice of the Mass, the divine office are the top two. So you don't need to leave here and figure out what's important to me. I'm telling you what's important. There are other choices you can have, but those two things, top of the list. So you've got to figure that out. So that's the way I'm just telling you how I think, right? This is how I think. So I'm thinking I got to find a way to get people to pray the divine office. If that's true, I have got to use every ounce of creativity and persuasion that I have with my people to get them to pray. That's my job. So that's how I think. That's how we got to think, to win. The wise win souls. We have to win our children. So we've got to be creative. We've got to be energetic, courageous, come up with ideas, try things, be willing to fail, get back up, try something else. Congregational singing. So I think it's important. I think it's an important factor in keeping our kids in church. It requires diligence, though, to promote this. Why? Because people were lazy. Atrophy is the rule. We're in a corrupt body. We're in a fallen world, and atrophy is the rule. Everything tends to just kind of to go downhill. So we have to kind of continually energize, the priest. I to be honest, I really, really do not like that part of the job. I just told my people the other day, it really wears me out, being a cheerleader. I don't like it. And I complain about it. I really have to work not to get resentful. I don't get resentful, but I have to work at it. Because I just hate that part of it. Just constantly, you talk, people stop coming to confession. So I give a talk about confession, and before you know, everybody's coming to confession. And then 6 months later, they stop coming to confession. I'm like, good grief, can you just please, I just constantly have to just keep anyway, I told my wife, I'm like, when I said yes to the priesthood, this is pretty much what I signed up for, is this. This is the job. This is the job. It's not part of the job. It's the whole job. And when I realized that, I'm like, what in the world was I thinking? But we need to try and have a good attitude. I'm now talking to myself, not you. Thank you for listening in, but being a good sounding board. Anyway, congregational singing, it takes work. So I was thinking a lot about this past year, about congregational participation, because in direct reference to how to keep our kids, because I think that one of the keys to keeping our kids is they've got to engage with Christ. They need to have a very real encounter with Christ in the liturgy and in prayer. And they don't, by the way, neither do a lot of the adults, but we're talking about kids, but they don't. They sit and just in one ear and out the other and thinking about all this and thinking about that. And they leave. If we could help them, guide them, encourage them to really, truly pray, to really encounter Christ in the services, this is going to go a long, long way to them staying in the faith and staying in the church. If you have really met Christ, have you ever had a really, really powerful, intimate encounter with God? If you have that as a regular thing or periodic thing in your prayer life, you are going to be much, much, less inclined to walk away from Jesus, when you go off to college or you hit some hard financial times or something as a young family. Because you're going to be intimate with him. He's going to be your best friend. I have a deacon at the church. He's always saying Jesus and Mary are best friends. We need to somehow find ways to encourage that closeness, that intimacy, that encounter with Christ. And we can't ensure it, but there are things that we can do to foster it, to inspire them, to try and help them, to work towards it. One practical thing is congregational singing. See, these are big, lofty goals, but these big, lofty goals usually boil down to elbow grease, just hard work. And you're the people that do everything. Let's just be honest here, right? The guys are all lazy. It's the women that do all the work. So this is the right group to be talking to, okay? So books. You need books. There's a lot of work to make books. So people need books so they can sing. Now, there are some Orthodox people who don't want people singing in church. There is a different philosophy, okay? They want them staring at the floor and contemplating their navel. I'm not here to criticize that philosophy or approach. I do not agree with it. I don't think it's helpful. There might be some culture in which it can be successful. I'm not even saying it can't be if there's a certain kind of culture. But I don't think, and I'm not at St. Patrick's, and I'm not sure in this culture that it's the wise approach. And I don't think it's going to keep our kids. That's just my opinion. But So I was thinking about this a year ago. I called a priest friend of mine, who's pretty evangelical. And I said, hey, I've been thinking about this. I said, are you like a big promoter of congregational singing and participation? And he said, like he'd never thought about it before. He's kind of like, I don't know, I guess so. And I said, do you like make books? Like, how do you do that? He's like, I don't really do anything. And like, do you make books? Do your people have books? And he's like, sometimes, not really. It's too much work. So I'm like, man, you're a great priest. Like, I really think highly of this guy. I'm like, you can't do that. Like, you're gonna lose our kids. So you need to get them to sing. So the other day, Carrie was, she's always in the choir. She's a choir director. Never sits out. But for some reason, you were sick. She couldn't sing. And we have a great B team. So, I mean, the talent on the choir runs real deep. So we have plenty of people that can lead. So she took the opportunity to sit out in the congregation. And after Mass that day, we were home and she's like, I was out there. People were not singing. And I'm like, I know, I've been noticing people are getting lazy about singing. And she's like, this is unacceptable. I need to say something. Can I say something? I'm like, yeah, you go right ahead. Say anything you want. So, I'm not gonna get in your way. So next Sunday, she stood up and and we chatted about it and talked about how important this was and revisited this big conversation we've had for years, congregational participation. It's a big deal. There's lots of controversy in the church. Father can tell you, like, should the canon be silent or should it be out loud? How fast are you running through the Psalms? That's a different problem for you guys, because in the Eastern Rite, you have more stuff to get through, so you speed everything up. Ours, we have less stuff, so we can slow down. There's more pauses, and so it's, to be honest, it's easier for us, I think.
Yeah.
It actually is easier. You have a bigger challenge. But you and your priest, and he needs to think about how can I serve these services in such a way and still fulfill everything I'm supposed to do in such a way that the people can be engaged. That is his responsibility. Before God, he must do that. And I'm telling you, not him, because you're the really important person, right? He's the head, but you're the neck that turns the head. So you have influence. You have influence. But he's got to do that, or we're going to lose our kids. So we do it in our church. We know what problems we face. You've got your own problems. And one of the things is just blasting through the Psalms so fast that everybody's just like, they can't really engage them. From my perspective, as somebody coming from a different liturgical experience, that's what I experience. And I would think that the children, we need to be thinking about what can we do in that regard. But anyway, that's a side comment. So she got up and she shared something, and the long and short of it was, look, you people have stopped singing. This is unacceptable. We need to be participating. We need to be singing. We need to be worshiping God. We've gotten lazy. And if you don't start singing, we're going to lose our kids. She said several things about the kids, about how important it was for the kids to be engaged in the services and to participate and to sing. And the next week, and since then, I literally can't hear myself think in the services because everybody, am I done? That's all right. So I think I had just mentioned to you that my wife Carrie had got up and shared with the congregation about the importance of the children particularly, but all of us participating by singing and not getting lazy. And our people did sing. We had a rich culture of that in our congregation, but they got lazy. They stopped singing. So she got up and very nicely sort of chastised them a little bit. And they love her way more than me. I've decided if I ever really want to get something done around there, I'm going to ask her to make the announcements from now on. Because I guess they get tired of listening to me. But immediately the next week, I mean, the room, the nave, the temple was just filled with sound. Everybody's singing. And that's been 3 or 4 weeks ago. And they responded. Every Sunday, where I'm in there, I was just thinking this past Sunday, I was trying to say prayers up front. They're secret prayers with the deacon and subdeacon. I mean, we couldn't hear ourselves. because everybody was singing out. It was really beautiful. The point is we recognized a little bit of, we were slipping, right? We were slipping. We talk about this at home all the time. I talk to her about it. We talk to our kids about it. Our kids are around all the time. All my kids are at church. And we talk about these things. We talk about them at coffee hour. We just hammer away at this stuff constantly. And then we're like, what can we do? We need to do something. And we're always sort of on the prowl for identifying problems and then figuring out how can we address this and dealing with it and educating. And educating is so important. Not barking. I sort of made a little joke about how she got onto everybody, but it wasn't that. She wasn't barking at people. It was more the things that she shared were heartfelt and to the point, but they were educational. And if we treat our kids that way too, we need to talk to our kids in such a way that we're trying to help them understand why such and such is important. We're trying to give them a vision, plant something in them. And that again is part of respecting them as human beings. So we have about 225 souls in our parish. 60 to 65% of the members are under the age of 30. And so we have lots of millennials coming in too. I mean, lots. Like, we're full right now. We're trying to build a new building. So we're pretty much full. We can't fit anybody else in. We built a choir loft during COVID because it was full and we needed more seats. So that gave us 50 more seats, but we filled that up now. And so we're trying to build a new building right now. But we have a dinner at my house for the young adults. I love working with the young adults. We have a dinner once a month, and there's 40 to 50 young adults that come to dinner every month. So this is just some of the background. Also, of all the young people that grew up at our church, this is very pertinent to the topic that we're addressing today. Of all the young people that grew up at our church, we have lost almost none. I can count on one hand how many kids, and they might come back. I'm holding out. Like, it's not like they're lost, but they're wandered off like naughty little sheep right now. But hopefully we will find a way to get them back with God's help. So we've lost almost none. You know what the statistics are. They're catastrophic. I don't, sometimes you don't know whether to trust statistics, but some of the statistics are that 60 to 80% of young people are leaving their Christian faith, like at their college years. And in Orthodoxy too. This is across the board, all denominations, all different Christian groups. This concern, this is a crisis. This is an epidemic. We should be losing sleep over this. I've been concerned about this for years. So in our situation, you look at this situation, we've lost dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of kids. We've lost almost none. And not only do they not leave the faith, they won't leave the church. Like, they change their careers, they change their housing situation. We have people that move. Last year, I don't know how many people moved. These are parishioners who maybe live 40 minutes away. They sold their house and moved so they could be 10 minutes away for no other reason. So we have all these services and all this stuff going on, and they just want to be they want to be able to be part of, that's their life. That's the center of their life, not their social club outside of church or their job. The church is their life. That's their family. I preach about this all the time, not in a heavy-handed way, not in a manipulative way. I just try and inspire them. I try and give them a vision. And they're like, hey, Father, we have somebody just moved this weekend. They live 35, 40 minutes away. They just bought a house 5 minutes away. This has happened, I don't know how many times, just this year, and again last year. So, but they're inspired by wanting to be a part of a community and to make that community the center of their lives. I have so many stories I could tell you to reinforce that. Anyway, my question was, a few years ago, started looking around. We have a pretty well-known Orthodox theologian that attends the parish, and he has taught in universities his whole career and worked with young people, and he loves teaching young people. And he stands around every Sunday, and we sit there and have a cup of coffee, and he's chatting, and he's like, what is going on here? I don't understand this. Like, where did all these young people come from? Like, what did you do? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't do anything. I don't know. So this is crazy. He said, I've never seen anything like this. And I'm like, I know. And they won't leave. They stay. And so we were chatting, and I thought, I don't know how this happened. It probably would behoove us to try and figure out why this happened, so we could keep doing it, right? So I'm sort of playing dumb, like Columbo dumb, just a little bit, but or Matlock dumb, just a little bit, but still, it's not like we weren't intentional and haven't worked hard at trying to keep our young people. But it wasn't through programs, I can tell you that. It was all very intuitive, organic, and it was about a life. It was about a culture. It was about establishing certain priorities and certain values in their lives. It was not about programs. Programs will not accomplish that. I mean, one Orthodox jurisdiction has probably spent $1 million, in the last 5 years trying to figure out how to keep our young people. Now, I don't know what they've come up with. Maybe they've come up with a lot of great stuff, but if they've just come up with a lot of programs, they just wasted $1 million. Because that's not the answer. And it's not complicated either. It's pretty simple, at least I think. So anyway, I started thinking about how did we end up with this situation so we can keep doing it. And it wasn't about these programs. In fact, I limited programs. In fact, we don't have a lot of programs because of the priorities and values that we hold in our community culture. Those programs, if we have too many programs, they're going to actually violate the very priorities that I'm about to tell you. So I would warn against too many programs. Our social program is go to church like a lot. Like if you think about whatever you think a lot is and triple it. So go to church a lot and then have the parish hall right outside the nave doors and people just hang out like for hours. That's what our people do. So they go to church a lot and then they hang out in the parish hall and drink coffee and hang out and talk. That's my social program for our church. And after every service, people are out there for, 1-2 hours just hanging out and talking. They won't leave.
Tell them what you call it.
Post-liturgy loitering. Yes, we promote loitering at the church. So I'm going to skip because I have too much material and I'm going to run out of time here. Another thing, and I don't need to talk about this, we all know this, but it's the hard reality. We could say, do what I say, not what I do, but if we are not making wise choices, if we're not setting certain priorities and values in the way that we live as parents, as priests, as leaders in the church, we can sit and talk about wanting to keep our kids in the faith. It's just a lost cause. I mean, we've got to be serious about our own life and the choices that we're making as well. But let me share a few random things. I guess they're not too random, about very connected to everything I've already said, actually, and it's sort of been woven into what I've already said. But let me pull some ideas out and focus on them. The first thing is I've talked a lot about a culture, building a culture, about values and priorities. The first value or virtue that I want to emphasize is that of stability. Stability. For me as a pastor, this is the brass ring, is stability. Like my definition of a mature Christian life is stability. Like what I'm trying to achieve in my life, in my family's life, and on church's life, I want everybody to be on about a 3% grade, in a steam locomotive, just chugging up the hill like this. Just slight incline, none of this, no big swings and up and downs, just stability. It's so important. Stability of play, and this is concrete too. This is not just inner stability, stability of your faith, stability of a disciplined life. How important is discipline, especially the young men? I love working with young men. That's why I try and get them to pray the office, because that brings stability in their life. But stability of community and relationships. Stability of place. Don't move. Stay put. If you get in a fight with somebody, work it out. We are committed to conflict resolution. We have to be committed. the value of loyalty. We don't talk enough about loyalty. Now, I'm Italian, and if some of you are Arab, we know about loyalty, right? And la familia, loyalty is such a core value. You stick together no matter what. I'm tempted to tell a quick little story. The stories are important, that's what inspired me, but I have limited time. Real quick. So we have 100 acres. And this is being taped. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I don't think I'm going to say anything that will embarrass anybody. But it is kind of personal. We have 100 acres. Zoning won't let us build any more houses. Remember I told you there's like a gazillion grandkids and great-grandkids who all love to build their house on the property. They're all talking about going and now trying to find their own 100 acres. And none of them will go more than 10 or 15 minutes from the church. So that's the rule. But we had one lot. We thought we had one lot left. So one of the grandkids goes to Pappy and says, "Hey, Pappy, can we have that lot?" And Pappy's like, "Sure." Do you see the problem? You see the potential problem that's coming up here? So,
How many grandkids do you have?
there's like 25 plus 14, it's like in the 30s, but you count the great grandkids and then the grandkids, all of these are viable for that lot. There was no family meeting. There was no, you can understand how important that lot was to being able to enter into the beauty of that community and everything. One grandkid, Pappy can have the lot. This is typical Pappy. He hasn't talked to anybody about it. He's just like, "Yeah, sure, you can have it." Did anybody get upset? Nobody got upset. Nobody said a word. I'm sure some people thought, "Why do they get the lot?" But that's as far as it went. Why? Because we're not going to do anything. Even as something as important as that, that's a big deal. That's not a small thing. It's not like who got, Pappy's old tractor, whatever. This is their whole life where they're going to raise their kids. Nobody said a word. Nobody got upset. Nobody is upset. Somebody had to get it, and Pappy said they could have it, and it's fine. And the reason is because we were not going to allow something like that to create tension and disharmony in our family. We just weren't going to do it. So that's how we have to live as a parish. So I was taught to guard that, and I guard that in our parish. I have zero tolerance for anything going on in the parish that's going to cause, disharmony, disunity, fractions, that sort of thing. Zero tolerance. It's just not happening. And do you know what I mean? And my people know that. I just tell them we're not doing that. When COVID hit, I stood up in the pulpit and I said, "This is going to be tough. We're going to have lots of different opinions about how to deal with this." I said, "Good people are going to disagree." I said, "We're going to figure this out together. We're going to get through it. But we are not having a bunch of factions and fighting. We're not doing that here. We're just not doing it." And what I mean by that is we are not doing it. Do you understand? It's not going to happen. And guess what? It didn't. And we handled things kind of in our way at St. Patrick's. But we had almost 100% agreement on how we should do things. And so that made it easy for me. But we had a handful of people that probably thought we should do things a little bit different. And by handful, I mean literally count on one hand, maybe 3 people. They were lovely people. They disagreed, but they agreed that they would not create problems. Well, I told them, "You're not going to create a problem." And that's just all there is to it. Because we have to, this is a value, what I'm trying to express to you. This is a value that I hold, that the devil is the divider of the brethren. That is the most evil thing that can happen in a community or in a family. It's dissension, disunity, disharmony, factions. That's why St. Paul is so harsh on gossiping and backbiting. And this cannot be allowed in a community. If we have problems, doesn't mean we have to sweep them under the rug. We can meet, we can work them through. but we have to find a way forward to stay together. And this is a part of our stability. It's stability of community. And it is so important for our children. Saint Benedict, who's very important to us, the Benedictines have a unique vow that other monastics don't take. They take a vow of stability. They vow to stay with the same community they enter into for life. It doesn't always work out, but that's the vow that they take. We have our society, our culture. It's not a culture. We don't have a culture anymore outside the church. In our world today, it's an anti-culture. But in society, there's so much instability, so much lack of stability, so much transient. Father and I were talking a minute ago. 40 years ago, you took a job, and then 40 years later, you got to watch it, and you retired. You had a retirement party. Now, it's in the tech industry. I still can't get used to this. You are not expected to stay with the same company for more than 18 months to 2 years. That's the expectation. You're just expected to move around like that. And I mean, besides being a priest, I'm also a master blacksmith. When I make things in metal, we make them to be around for over 500 years. Now we outfitted our house with all appliances when we built it, and they're all designed to break in 5 years. This is crazy. What does our world come to? But instability and divorce. I didn't even know what divorce meant until I was in high school, late high school. So I heard somebody got a divorce, and I'm like, what is that? They told me, I'm like, I don't understand. That's not possible. Like, you can't, they're married. That's it. I didn't even know what it was. But my rule, so anyway, we got to find ways to build stability. I could talk about this for a long time, but my sort of personal rule, and I tell people this all the time, I just met with a young man, and a lot of young people there. He's lost. He has no purpose. He doesn't know what to do. He's thinking about doing this, about doing that. And I said, look, this is the rule. Just don't move, stay put. And if a big giant hand comes down out of heaven, picks you up and moves you, that's fine. Other than that, stay put. Just don't move. And if God makes it clear that you're supposed to be here or doing that, then go do it. Otherwise, put your nose down, get to work, pray, be faithful in whatever you have going on in your life and the people in your life right now, and stay put. That's my rule. I live by that rule. I've lived by that rule my whole life. I teach my people to live by that rule. And it's amazing, if you're supposed to be following a different career, moving to a different part of the country, God will make that clear, and then you'll have peace about it. You'll be confident, and you can do it knowing it's pleasing to God. Otherwise, stay put and just work where you are and work with the people. There's something in human nature that wants to always run, it's better over there, or we're trying to get away from something. And you've probably heard the saying, trying to get away from our problems. They're trying to look for something. The problem is your problem is going to follow you wherever you go, because you're your own problem. Wherever you go, there you are. Well, surprise. You're going to have the same problems over there. And if you keep uprooting a plant, it's never going to set down roots. We need to stay put and work through things. And we find people boring, right? We find people annoyed that we're in. My favorite part of being a pastor in a church is how God threw me together with this group of people that I would have never chosen to be my friends necessarily. I love that. Because you have to figure out how to find people fascinating and beautiful that otherwise you wouldn't have, because we're just all so shallow. But we need to find the people. You didn't ask to be born to the parents you got. You didn't ask for your siblings, but they're your family. We talk about freedom all the time, but we're not really free. We're free in some sense, and we're not free in other senses. You didn't ask to be born. And there's nothing you can do. God brought you into existence without your permission. You are not free fundamentally. You can't take yourself out of existence. Even if you try, you're still going to exist. That's the reality of our existence, is we are not free. God chose through his love to bring us into existence. And he chose to plant you in a family with these people. And whether you like them or not, you need to learn to love them. And this is a beautiful way to live. And so this is part of stability of relationship. And now, you fall in and out of love, and you divorce, and you get it's just crazy. It's just the whole culture of stability is lost. Anyway, lots of things to talk about with stability, but it's I think a very important aspect of what we need to do for our children is provide them a sense of stability, because we have a crisis of depression, anxiety, fear, lack of confidence, purpose. I've got all these young people, 50, 60 young people or more in the church, and they're pious kids, they're pious young people, they pray, they come to church, but they're still wrestling with depression and anxiety at a very high rate. I mean, I'm always asking, I'm like, did we have depression? Were we depressed all the time when we were in our 20s? What is going on? And, I'm sure there's lots of factors, but I think one of the factors is insecurity. I think insecurity lies at the root of a lot of our mental health problems. This is just a freebie too, there's no extra charge for this. I really think that at the root of most marital conflict is insecurity in the relationship. Huh? We're all hungry. We want to be loved, and we want to feel secure. We want to feel safe, and we want to feel safe and that somebody is going to love us no matter what. And we want to be connected. We don't want to be alone. That's just rudimentary to being human. To be alone, to be in hell is to be alone. To be alone is to be in hell. That's what it means. To be cut off from all others, because salvation is to be joined to others, is to be brought into the relationship of the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and his body, the church. That's what it means to be saved. It means to exist fully as a human being, means to exist in community, and in a stable community. So if we don't feel security in that love, and confidence in that, if we feel insecure, that vulnerability, that sense of danger, we feel the danger of sliding into being alone. So we're always looking to our spouse to meet that need of security. And actually that the spouse can't meet it, because only God can meet it. So we put something on our spouse that they can't do. And then it begins to wreak havoc in the relationship. We start to try and extract something from them that they can't provide, because we're supposed to be getting it from God. When we're both getting it from God instead of from one another, we are coming closer together, like this. We're both going like this. So insecurity, I'm sorry, that was like a 30-second, real quick, for what would take an hour lecture to talk about this issue, but insecurity lies at the root of so many of our mental health issues, our psychological problems, our spiritual problems. And this is what we have got to address. We've got to address these feelings of insecurity in our marriages. What's the best thing you could do for your kids? Love one another. That's the best thing parents could do for their kids, is to convince the kids that the love between the mom and dad is unassailable. And that will help the kid to become healthy, mentally healthy. That was the best thing my parents did for me. My parents were not perfect by any stretch. They were like very strong personalities, and it was a big, loud, lots of stuff in the household. Anyway, the point, but what they gave us, we never doubted their love for one another, never, or their love for us. We felt so secure, despite all the other craziness that was going on in the house, that one virtue covered a multitude of sins and really impacted our stability as children. Now my sisters and I, I have wonderful sisters. Anyway, I'm just touching on some things sort of randomly here almost. Insecurity, stability, all of that. Liturgy, let me say something real quick. I've got like 5 minutes and then we have to stop. I said we're building a culture. What kind of a culture? What's at the center of a culture? It can't be an abstract theoretical culture. There's something that actually, there's a nucleus, there's a center of the culture that literally births the culture and sustains and nurtures the culture. What's at the center? That's a rhetorical question because I'm going to tell you. And I know that sounds bold, but I feel like I know what the answer is. I feel really confident about it too. Like there's lots of things I don't know what the answer are. And I'll say, I don't know. I say I don't know a lot, but I know the answer to this. What is at the center of the culture is the sacrifice of the Mass, the divine liturgy. And I don't mean theoretically. I don't mean in a manual. I mean the actual sacrifice of the Mass that we go to and eat the body and blood of Jesus Christ, that calls a group of people who were formerly at their home sleeping or watching TV or whatever they were doing to get up, get dressed. Hopefully they weren't eating. Get dressed, because they're fasting for Mass, but they get dressed, get ready, purpose to go to the church and join together and become the church incarnationally to receive the body and blood of Christ, and then be together after Mass and talk and fellowship and relate to one another. And they do this a lot. So there's a calendar. So we produce a calendar. So the center of this culture and this community, to put it in cute terms, I could say, is our calendar. Because it's the calendar that tells them when to get up and go to Mass. So, next Wednesday is, the feast of St. Swithin in the Swamp. And, this is a really big feast in our community. So, you're not going bowling and you're not watching Seinfeld and you're not going out to Bob Evans. You're going to plan your day. You're going to get off work early if you need to. You're going to do whatever you need to make, whatever arrangements you need to make to get to Mass on that night for St. Swithin in the Swamp. Because this is our family and this is what we do. And our whole life together is formed by the sacrifice of the Mass. That's on a social level, but it's even on a much more profound, deeper level. It's on a spiritual, ontological, metaphysical level. We literally are becoming the body of Christ by receiving the body of Christ. And being the body of Christ means being a communion of persons. It's not just our individual relationships. So this goes back to community. And it goes back to stability of community and stability of relationships. But the liturgy, the sacrifice of the Mass, and I could talk about, I am 2 years into a 5-year Sunday school program right now on this topic. So I just talked to you for 3 or 4 minutes, and we've logged in about 400 pages of notes on this topic. So I can't I'm just touching on this, but it's so important. It's so important. There's nothing more important. It's absolutely the most important thing. If a father doesn't go to church, even if his wife does, only 1 child in 50 will become a regular worshiper. You might say, well, you're talking to the ladies group. Yeah, but you're the neck that turns the head. You've got to pull out all the stops. Do whatever you need to do. Be creative. Be shrewd. Be sneaky. Be conniving. Ask the patriarch Jacob to help you to be shrewd, to figure out how to make all this stuff work. You might say, I'm not the one in power. I can't do this. You can. It's the advisor that has all the power, really, in any organization. Well, I'm out of time. I was going to save the best for last. I can come until they kick us out.
Tell us some of the stuff that you said would make us sit back and say, really? You expect us
Oh,
to do
yes. Yeah, I didn't even get to any of that. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about education. It's so important. All right.
You want to come back at 10 o'clock for the evening conversation?
Oh, maybe.
At HR
Let
auditorium?
me try and slip a couple things in here real quick that are really important. And you might say, seriously, do you actually teach your people this? And the answer is yes. Our kids, I don't think you can send your kids to public school. I'm just going to say it. I'm not heavy-handed, or I don't make anybody feel bad about this at our church. I have to be careful because I want to be winsome. I don't want people to shut me out. We have a couple families that do go to public school, but I am not supportive. And I try and talk in such a way that they will come to the conclusion that this is not what's best for their kids. Now, their situation's a little unique because their school is in the country, is very conservative, and it's not as dire a situation. But generally speaking, in the big picture, this is one of those things, like, I just think we've got to make a serious decision. We just can't do this. We're sacrificing our kids. So if we're serious about meeting these issues, this is something I think we have to take very seriously. We've homeschooled in our church, lots of homeschooling. We have a parochial school now. We just started. We're very excited about that. Our school is like a monastery school, so it's very parochial. It's completely oriented around our particular culture.
No non-Orthodox students?
There might be, but very, very few. We have mass we have chapel every day, catechism every day. They stop and say the office 4 or 5 times a day throughout the day. It is totally 100% unapologetically Orthodox. It's not just Orthodox, it's Western Rite Orthodox, because that's our context. It's not just Western Rite Orthodox, it's Western Rite St. Patrick Orthodox. Our entire school year, the days that we take off, the whole year program is completely dictated and designed around our particular mass schedule and liturgical schedule, everything. So, and we don't care about the money. I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because we need money. We'll figure it out. But these are our priorities. So I'm like, this is what we're doing. We're not sacrificing our vision. These kids, I've never been so excited about anything in my whole life as this school and what we're doing, because it's unique. It's actually unique even with other great schools because of how we're doing it. So, but we've made these decisions. We're living I'm insisting that we're going to make decisions according to our values and priorities. Something else. When do you lose your kids? College. They get picked off in college. So guess what we did? Well, I say we did. I never told anybody to do this. But as my wife will tell you, I am a little sneaky. Like, I know how to talk to inspire people to want to do what at least I think is the right thing. So I never told anybody to do this, but they've all done it. All of our college kids that go to college go to the local community college for the first 2 years. All of them. Very important. Why? I mean, I did plot to do this. You lose them in college. They leave the community. They're in the most vulnerable state they've ever been in. There is a concerted effort to destroy their faith. And they're not tied into the community and their friends and the culture and worship. And we're sending them off to have what? An experience? To go get drunk on the weekends and to question their faith? Like, what are we, crazy? Because we think we owe them this? Like, we owe our kids this experience? I don't owe my kids, what I owe my kids is to keep them in Christ, to keep them in the kingdom of God. I'm going to do everything I can in a non-manipulative, heavy-handed way. I'm going to try and inspire them to want to do the right thing with philosophy, metaphysics, and teaching and talking to them respectfully. And they all bought in. None of our kids, all of them. One of the ones I told you we lost, he went off to school for all 4 years. He's the one we lost. So, do whatever you want to do. I'm just telling you, this is a very practical thing that you can try and begin to talk to your families about. And the parents, I'm not suggesting being heavy-handed. I'm just saying, you could begin to inspire them. And I think that this was an important factor in us not losing our kids. It was one of many things. All right, I guess I should stop. Thank you.